So next we'll shift over to the defensive line. And with the defensive line, I'm including some of the hand in the dirt linebacker, edge hybrids in this. So I'm including the Wolf and Bandit positions for Alabama. Officially, Alabama has like Bandit Wolf, a nose tackle, and a defensive tackle. But, I'm going to include all those when I'm talking defensive line. So, again, referencing the Cover Crimson depth chart that they came out with, these are starters that, started a ton of time last season. You got guys like Quay Rusall, LT Overton, Tim Keenan, and then the one change would be instead of Tim Smith, you have James Smith sliding into the starting defensive tackle. Those four names all played substantial minutes last season. James Smith, obviously the only non-starter in that list that I just mentioned. Again, guys that have a ton of experience behind them. You have guys like Jamarian Latham, obviously a ton of experience behind them. Yanze Pierre, Noah Carter, Jordan Renaud, Jeremiah Beeman, Edric Hill. Then you have a transfer in Kelby Collins. He's kind of a little bit of an X factor. The potential becomes like what role, how good is he going to be in his role, and what kind of role Alabama sees him in. Is he, good enough to play his way into more of a starting, or not starting, but substantial minutes? What does he bring to the table? He's a transfer from Florida. So that becomes when you're talking about this defensive line, right? The big thing that when you're, in my mind, when you're talking about the defensive line, and something that Alabama did not have a ton of success with last season, was getting to the quarterback. Alabama got to the quarterback okay. We had 25 sacks, but when you compare that we had 25 sacks and our opponents had 24 sacks against us, that just, for the fact that we had a mobile quarterback, us having 24 sacks is kind of low. I feel like if you have, even though Alabama's defense or offensive line last season, really only had a couple of games that had major issues, I think that the fact that we only got 25 sacks from a defense definitely scares me a little bit. When I look at the bigger thing that scares me about that is when you look at where the sacks came from, right? Last season, the sacks came from Jahad Campbell and Q Robinson. Now, that's okay because if your thought process is the way that Kane Wommack's defense is, the defensive line helps just funnel it to the linebackers, and it's more of the linebackers get the sacks and the defensive linemen do more of the dirty work. And, because there was a lot of talk last season about like LT Overton. The LT Overton officially only finished with 2 sacks, but he had a ton of hurries, and he had a ton of situations where he just couldn't finish the play, right? So, all it takes is a couple of breaks, and now he has 5 or 6 sacks, and the numbers don't look the same. I'm okay with that thought process. I'm also okay with the thought process that because you're replacing Jahad Campbell and Q Robinson with a Nakai Hill-Green and Justin Jefferson, or whoever else is going to replace. Well, really from Q, you've got Quay Rusall, or whoever's going to you think is going to slide into that specific position. I'm okay with that thought process, right? I'm okay with the thought process that we have guys that will slide into those positions. However, you still are losing 11 sacks from last season. And that's from James Smith, Q Robinson, and Jahad Campbell, right? So you have a decent amount of sacks from last season that you are losing. And the question for me when it comes to the defensive line, I think that in general, our defensive line did okay. I think that Alabama's defensive line needs to do a little bit better job stopping the run against teams like a Vanderbilt or against an Oklahoma. I think that Vanderbilt was the bigger one that was the problem. Obviously, we talked at length about the issues with that game last episode and about how definitely changes were made after that game. So I don't want to completely judge the whole thing off of that one game, but even look at like the South Florida game. I think that there were moments in the South Florida game, in the Vanderbilt game, in the Oklahoma game, that the defensive line and that our ability to stop the run, and this isn't just the defensive line, this is also the linebackers, but our ability to stop the run definitely hindered our ability to get off the field. And because of that, like, this is a position, this defensive line is a spot where I really just would like to see additional growth from these guys. I know that we have the guys who are going to have a ton of experience. And I think when you're talking about going from year 1 to year 2 in a system, I think that you're going to have a fairly large jump, because last season it was a lot of Kane Womack implementing the defense and a lot of, we're moving from Nick Saban's defense to Kane Womack's defense, which was very different. And some of the philosophies and some of the play calls, you could only make certain play calls because you're only at, this level of the defense. Similar to when we talk about the offense, right? You're only at a certain base level of the defense or offense because of implementation and, just being a first-year guy in the system. Now you have a full offseason, a full season, now another full offseason, and everybody outside of Kelby Collins that is on your main starting depth chart for the defensive tackles, defensive ends positions are guys that have been in the system the whole time. Kelby Collins, Justin Hill, Landon Simmons, again, off of the depth chart that they have, are the only guys, and these are 3 to 4 guys down the depth chart. So this is not your starters, not even your second line guys. But these are the guys who have not played a full season, full off season with Kane Womack. The benefit that I see with that is Kane Womack now has the ability to obviously show what went wrong last season in certain games, etc., and can just point to that of like, hey, this is what we did wrong, this is what we have to fix to do better, right? And I think that his ability to actually have a full extra offseason, having implemented the defense, I think that that's going to speak volumes into how much more Alabama is going to be able to do on defense, whether it be from scheme, whether it be from personnel, right, changing things around a little more. And again, the fact that when we're talking about the returners on defense, the fact that you have so many returners on defense, 8 returners on defense, and 69% of the returning production from the defense returning for this season, it is hard to overstate how good that is for Alabama moving forward for this season, right? Like I said, I'm doing the position by position and what my thoughts are on some of the starters and, who we're having to replace, etc. And like I said, I think the spot about this specific spot is, my biggest concern is the pass rush. I would like to see guys like Overton get into the ball carrier a little better. I'm very curious to see what like a full Quay Russaw, obviously got 2.5 sacks his freshman year last year. 2.5 tackles for loss. His freshman year last year with 1 sack. So him being a redshirt sophomore, very curious to see what he looks like in a starting position, what Latham looks like with an extra year, what Pierre may look like with an extra year. The fact that we had some younger guys that were in some of those edge rush positions, potentially like a Keon Keeley, we've heard a lot about him, like what happens when he potentially, sees the field in significant minutes and significant snaps. That's really the spot where I have the biggest questions is related to the pass rush. Like I said, I think that the run game is a thing that I think Alabama had some issues with at times last season, but I do think it cleaned up. I just want to see that continuous and continue to get better. But the pass rush is the real spot. And like I said, if the answer becomes that the pass rush is going to be very similar, Quay Russaw is going to step into the Q Robinson role, and then you're going to have some of your sacks being done by Nakai Hill-Green or Deontay Lawson from that linebacker position on a blitz or something. Okay, I'm okay with that. But I just need to see where the pass rush is going to come from. I think that our defensive backs, as we talked about last episode, are going to be very good. So I'm not concerned that we have to be getting the, quarterback immediately. But this league has really good receivers. This league has, is going to have good quarterback play, even if we don't know who those quarterbacks are. they're going to be able to make plays. The receivers are going to be able to make plays. And so being able to get to the quarterback is something you're absolutely going to have to be able to do. And that's the one spot when we look at who we lost from last season and some of the unknowns for this season. Like I said, I think that we have the ability. There's just some unknowns, some question marks. That's the thing that I think concerns me the most when I'm thinking about this line. So